We're going to start the show in about 15 minutes, but before we do, I just wanted to open up the giveaway. Let everybody say hi. Hi, Yara. And
Hi.
Go ahead and enter if you want to win. We'll run the battler. I'm not sure what it is we're going to give away today, but we'll come up with something cool. So if you want to enter to win, all you have to do is follow the instructions, type in chat, choose the racing class you want. But you do need to start it with an exclamation mark. Oh, I got to stop listening to myself. All right, so go ahead and enter, and then we'll be started in just a few minutes. Also, if you have questions, there's a Q&A section now in the YouTube window, so feel free to drop the question in there, and then we'll go through those ones first, and then see how it goes. Maybe we'll take some from chat as well. All right, so I'm going to shut up now. We'll be back in about 15 minutes. Go ahead and enter to win, and we'll see you all in just a second. Bye. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm here today with Dave, Yorai, and Andrew to talk about game development. We've got a lot to talk about. I think we had a pretty big list of stuff, along with questions. YouTube added a Q&A section, so there's now questions that have been populating overnight, and probably more that will come in right now. So if you've got a question, feel free to drop it onto there. And if you wanted to enter to win whatever it is we end up giving away at the end of the show, you just have to choose a race and a class in the chat, and you'll pop up in the little giveaway battler window, and we'll start that battle in maybe an hour or so. The last man standing or last rat standing, we get a prize. So welcome, everybody, and thanks for all being here. Let's get, there we go. Get your space cleared out, not behind a logo. And
I was looking at it. It is nice.
Yeah, looking right through there. So how have you all been?
I've been doing pretty well. Got sick for the week, but I'm recovering right now. So, woo.
Oh, yeah, that's
I'm still old, so yeah.
I'm not
basically old. The same as being sick.
Yeah.
You feel that way as you get older, at least. I know I do. Like my bones ache, and the things that used to only happen when I was sick are now like how I wake up.
Get that game developer elbow grease going.
Something. I'd say losing weight definitely helped a lot, though. You know, when I lost weight, I started to feel a lot less pain. It's still more than when I was young, though. It's not even close.
It's a funny concept where you to increase your stats and getting to feel better, you actually put yourself in pain for the training to lose weight. But it's really important. And everybody watching, if you're developing games, please do take care of yourself. There is this crippling situation where developers will sit for hours and not do anything but make the stuff that they are passionate about, and they won't take care of themselves. Please take care of yourself. It's important long term.
Yeah, totally. You don't want to be the fat guy that dies of a heart attack in the corner of the office, basically.
With your VR headset on.
Yeah, and so nobody disturbs you for weeks on end until you start to smell.
It's funny, when I had the VR headsets a lot, I was actually pretty active because of them. I found that they made me relatively active compared to like my normal development. I'd be constantly getting up, putting them on, moving around, trying things out, and being not super physical, but a lot more active than without them, at least.
Well, VR fitness is a whole genre now that's doing really, really well. I mean, there's a company, I think it's called Black Studios or something, or Black Box Studios, and they just build gyms that have VR headsets linked to the mechanics. You can go in there and do weight exercises and band pulls and all the rest of it, and as you pull it, it actually affects the game you're working in and all the rest. Yeah. So I can't remember what it's Black something, but it's based on that whole thing. So VR gets you fitter. So tell whoever's you buying your presents that you'll get nice and slim if they buy you a VR headset. Christmas around the corner.
You know, it's actually funny because in 2016, when the Vive came out, I actually got a set from Relogic, and I've gotten Beat Saber when that was still popular. Well, it still is amazingly popular, but like when it was at its peak, when there were no competitors and no new headsets, I would mod and play that for hours. There was this one modded song that I kept trying to do over and over and over, and I would always miss like one note out of 174, and I would get so mad, and I would just go for another round. I think I got way better shape through that time.
You see, I got a VR headset and went, I don't want to do all this fitness stuff. So I built a motion simulator with arms and everything so I could get in it and still be lazy, but do VR where I move around and not get motion sick. So, yeah.
And you hung it from the ceiling so you could just pull it down and not have to do all that standing stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to have to lift up and pull up my headset. Mine just pulls down from the ceiling and my controller's just attached to the chair.
It's doing the microphone thing again.
Your microphone detaches too, apparently.
Yeah.
It does this wonderful thing where it thinks I need to talk louder, so it does.
And then softer, and then louder.
Yeah, it's.
There we go. It's going again.
Awesome.
What device are you? Are you just straight USB in off of that, or are you going through a mixing device?
So this has got an XLR, and it goes into a Wave XLR input. But there's some setting, and every time I go on a call, I remember that I've got to go and look at how to turn it off, but then I forget as soon as the call ends because it fixes itself during the call.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now you got me looking. I'm curious because I have that Wave XLR too, but I don't see any option. Wave gain lock? I don't know. I have no idea how you do that.
Yeah, that's where he done it. But yeah, I'll
No,
look
you
at
haven't.
No.
Aye. On the topic of fitness again, so in Relogic, we actually have a channel for health and fitness, and we just talk and say whenever we do is like some nice thing, trying to motivate everybody else to stay fit, which is a nice company feature. Yes. How would you call that? Something nice that happens in the company? Any of you have that going on?
Yeah, I mean, we did stuff like that at some of the companies. At Qualcomm, they actually gave out fitness tracking devices, and we had, I think, weekly competitions for it to keep track of stuff like that. But that's what you're talking about.
Andrew?
No.
So, on the topic of VR, Andrew, you actually got a new set to play,
I did.
right?
Look at that.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I had a Quest 1, and then I don't like Facebook, as many people don't like Facebook. And when they made you log in, I was like, well, there goes my Quest 1. And then not long ago, fine folks were talking about VR and said, oh, you don't need that anymore. And I was like, what? So I was at Costco and impulse purchased that thing. And now my arms hurt because I was doing this archery thing last night, and it's so much work to keep your hands like this for an hour.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So, do we want to get onto the questions, topics?
I'm up for whichever. Do you guys want to take questions first, or do you want to dive into some of the topics that we had? How about we'll just pop up the questions because Andrew just asked where they are. So I will just start.
Very silently.
I'll start pulling them up. So let's see. What do we got here? Let's start right up at the top, if I can. How do we do this? Sorry, I'm still very, very new to this part. Why is this UI weird?
In the meantime, there's already a pretty nice question by Archangel. Beat Saber is an excellent substitute for fitness. It's not exactly a question, but I want to point it out. It's not a substitute for fitness. It covers a tiny bit of fitness. You need to make sure that the entire body gets the proper training. Even if the games on VR are great, they won't train your feet much, and there's a lot of other muscles in the body that you probably aren't activating as you use VR. Don't
Swimming.
consider.
Swimming's a very good workout. Using your VR headset while you're swimming, even better. There is actually a company that does like these waterproof headsets. You can actually go in and do VR in the water and swim around. And
I will say though
that
that
shark behind you.
Playing VR games at night when you're usually playing other games and snacking is a good alternative because you can't snack easily while playing VR. So.
That's why you need a 3D printer that has one of these little funnels that you can just attach, you can just model and attach to the side of the head, so you can just fill it with popcorn when it's starting, and then you can play out. But VR will make you fitter gaming than it would do any other. But I mean, most devs I know, I tell them just find an activity that will do it, even if you go for a walk. But I have a rowing machine upstairs, and I'll go and row for 2 hours a week just to basically make sure that the oldness doesn't get me as quick. But I was kind of joking and half joking about the heart attack earlier, but I know people that have had like serious heart problems through just sitting at their desk for 16 hours.
Yeah, I mean, in general, if you are sitting for 16 hours, just don't, regardless of the situation in your health, etc. Just don't. It's bad. Never overwork. Walk healthily. Work smart. Work well. Don't overwork. Overworking is a sign that things are failing. You need to make sure that you can work properly, and if you don't have enough time, ask for more time. Most of the times, the limitations set on you in your companies are arbitrary, and you really need to let them know if things aren't going well and you don't have the time to do what you need to do. Don't overwork and kill yourself for it.
There's a guy I know, and Jason knows him as well, a guy called Andy. I'm not going to say his last name because I'm just about to take the mick out of him. But he has a stand desk, but he has a treadmill under it. And he'll walk on his treadmill. Like, I don't know how he does this, but he's an amazing coder, so he's obviously doing something right. But he'll be coding while walking on his treadmill. The weirdest thing, though, is when you get on a meeting with him and you basically boot up this Zoom meeting or whatever, and you're chatting to him, and he's there going like this as he's talking to you, as he's walking on his treadmill. And Jason knows him as well. But yeah, he super slim, super fit guy. But there we go.
My boss does that. He's got one of those. He does it 8 hours a day.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I tried that once myself. I built myself a treadmill desk by putting a treadmill under a desk, and my feet got all messed up because I would do it barefoot, and yeah, didn't work out.
Support.
No. I sold the treadmill.
I spent a lot of time and money making my desk move up the wall so I could do a sit stand, and I've used it like 4 times. Like, you can see it in the videos that I produced. It's like this immense system. I just don't do it. I tried it. I built it because when I build VR for room scale, bending over to change something as you're building, so you're doing something, I've got to debug this, and you bend over and you tap on your keyboard, that is incredibly bad for you. Like, you will suffer if you're doing it for a long period of time. So I recommend getting a sit stand desk, but I put it into stand mode, and I spent a day standing working at it, doing the headset and all the rest. Yeah, I was dying later on. I'm just not used to it.
Yeah, I only use my stand desk to install stuff.
Yeah, and get proper.
Go under, plug things in, and get back out.
Make sure you get proper stepping cancellation so that your feet won't hurt if you do plan on walking a lot while you're developing.
All right, so let's take this first question here. The first question that came in, again, these are on YouTube's new Q&A section. So if you got something, try dropping it in there. We'll try to take those, then take the ones from chat as well afterwards. But it says, is it okay to focus on a niche? My current game seems to be pretty well received in the few circles for its niche. But outside of that, the biggest complaint is that the base design is too complex. This probably happens to a lot of people where they come up with a game that's like a very complicated, more complex version of something else that they like that is maybe a bit harder to get across and sell. But I don't know. Do you guys think? I think it's okay as long as you're getting the game. It really depends on what the goal is, though.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Are we talking monetarily, or are we talking just from a sheer, I'm trying to develop my skills and make myself better as a game developer? Because
I just want to make this game.
Yeah, they all have a kind of a different take on it. So if you're building an indie game that you're trying to sell, and you're going to try and make money from that to progress and carry on doing this as a full-time job, and you're worried that about your game being very niche, let's say you're making a tunnel shooter or something like that, how big is that niche market? And you can find that out by going and finding other games that are in that niche on Steam. How many downloads do they have? How many reviews do they have? What's the developer been saying about how well they done and all the rest? If that niche has a lot of people like into it, or even a smaller group, but a group that buys every single one of those games that comes out in that niche, you can still do very well in that niche. The other thing is you're in a niche. So I'm going to say niche so many times, but when people are looking for those types of games, you'll be in a very small list, as opposed to I'm going to make a match-free game and being in an absolute giant list of match-free. Don't make match-free games. Being in an absolute giant set of match-frees, and maybe finding it harder to get eyes on your actual product. So it's research. Go on, find what games have been doing in that niche, see how well they've been doing, and produce it. I know people that have built very niche indie titles and then been really upset when they put them out and nobody buys them. And you're like, well, every other game in that niche doesn't have very many reviews. You could still do those games, but do it for the passion. Don't expect to make a ton of money out of it. Yeah, that's what I would say as far as monetarity is concerned.
On my end, rather than taking the monetary angle here, I do want to point out that focusing on niches is perfectly fine because, as David said, you can do your research and you can find out that these games actually survive pretty well. There's a ton of niches out there, and everybody has a game that they want that nobody else is making. And when they do find your game, they're probably going to jump on that. But if people are saying your base design is too complex, consider if it's actually necessary complexity for the design or whether it's needless complexity added that could be removed away, polished out. There are many systems in many games that are complex for no good reason other than that some other developer did that first and they are copying what they are seeing. And you can make innovations, you can make things better, you can make things more intuitive, more fun to use, more understandable at every given point. And this isn't just about things that are completely new and unique to you. This is about things that are done in many other games. Trying to keep things intuitive for users will usually get rid of that complaint, because there are people who play like 4x games, but as long as you have a proper introduction to that, there's not going to be a problem.
Andrew, I'm going to move on to the next question.
Yeah, I agree with all of you.
This one's about accessibility. I don't know the answer to this one. Maybe one of you guys does. So it says, hey, Jason, I have a question about accessibility in games. Games do a very good job at assisting players who are hearing impaired, but they don't do a good job with the visually impaired. I think it's kind of difficult because visually impaired, like, it is a very visual medium, but there's got to be something out there. I don't know. Any guys got thoughts on this? Is there?
So I want to bring up that there are games that do focus on that, but primarily they're AAA console games. I think The Last of Us had a really amazing system for that, The Last of Us 2, where they let you in the accessibility options set things like making special audio effects and literally telling you the situation on repeat and asking you what you want to do, turning the entire game essentially into a second game that's text-based computer telling you what you want to do, what you can do. You pick an action, it tells you how it went, and then you continue playing like that. Additionally, you can add more sound cues. Games rely on that a lot. Even heavy games that are not for the visually impaired just will sometimes cake the game in particles and you won't be able to see your character. But if the enemies, whenever they attack, they add like a really distinct sound effect that is on top of everything else in the game, you will know when you need to dodge and you will know when your attacks hit. So you can usually play completely blind. There are people who do like speed runs where they just have blindfold over their face and they manage to complete the entire run. That's not just complete game understanding. They can get through random events as well because the game gives them enough cues even without seeing. So there are ways to tackle this. Admittedly, if you don't have visuals, you have to rely on every other sense. So if you have a gamepad, you can use the rumble, the tracking, like you can, when a danger comes near, you can start shaking the gamepad slowly, and if you hit, you can actually make it like do a strong fast shake so that you know, yes, I properly hit. If an enemy comes near, you can give sounds for that. If you are close to a treasure, you can probably add a chime that comes once in a while. For example, in Diablo, even if a goblin is not on screen, you'll hear like goblin in another direction, and you'll hear which direction because you have stereo audio. So yeah, there are many ways you can add cues for the visually impaired.
Yeah, and don't just think about, when we talk about visual impairment, don't just think about people that have, that they have small sight of vision or whatever. Think about color blindness as well. There's a lot of games out there that just rely on color to do things, and you've got to start putting shapes into there. You've got to start thinking about the contrast of your colors and things like that, so that people that have color blindness, which is, common enough to make it an issue for a lot of games, you need to be able to produce for that. Patrick from Patrick's Parabox that was on here previously, I listened to him talk about it for ages once, where he'd looked at accessibility into his game. It's something to think about if you're working on for the indie developers out there making matching games and stuff like that.
So I do want to bring up something else. Is that if you want to use to be more accessible to colorblind people, be very careful about how you do it, because I've seen a lot of developers doing it entirely wrong. They're thinking I can have units that are red colored, units that are blue colored, and it's not going to invoke certain types of color blindness, because there's multiple types, by the way, for those unaware, which don't see certain other colors. One thing you want to be very careful about is also having different saturation and brightness for the colors that you do pick. League of Legends does this very nice thing where certain champions will have their visual effects literally swapped when they're on the enemy team for better visibility that they are hostile to you. There's also usually a more color blind accessible toggle option that will just straight up swap colors in the game that are kind of close to being difficult to witness. And if you do want to get really good about visibility in your game, you can just try turning the entire color off, going in grayscale mode. And Windows actually has a really nice feature for that. At least in Windows 10, you can enable accessibility options that let you toggle really quickly if you want to see everything in just contrast mode. That's like black and white. And on my end, it's just like Control Windows C after I enabled it. I think I should be showing in gray right now. I'm not sure. Yeah, no, okay.
Not
So
for
it's
us,
just on my
luckily.
end. Yeah, but the entire screen could go just grayscale, and I can see if I can witness differences in color or whether they are too similar.
Talking on the hardware, because somebody brought that up, Soul Studios brought up the hardware thing. Look at Microsoft and the innovations they done on accessibility with their controllers. They have a whole heap of accessibility controllers that you can get, and they're very adaptable, and you can plug your own hardware into those adaptability and accessibility controllers to produce stuff. They do a fantastic job of it, and they've been very well regarded. And as far as your question about you've got very big hands and you find controllers too small, the problem with the original Xbox is they made their controllers too big, and small children had problems using the controllers originally. So that's why you had the S controllers come out and a few others. But yeah, Microsoft and their there you go, the adaptive controller. It is an amazing suite that Microsoft produce for accessibility. And if you're a developer and you want to play with different controller types and you want to plug different things in, that thing is an awesome resource for it. So I'd highly recommend that if you're looking at how to adapt your games for accessibility. And there was I'm not going to remember, and I don't want to say their name. I'm going to look it up on LinkedIn, but there was a group, and I'm not going to find them, and I'm going to be really annoyed myself. But they from the UK that just focus on accessibility for gamers, and they help people they help children, especially that want to special effects. Gotcha. Special Effects is a company out in the UK that does work with people that have disabilities, people that have accessibility problems. Go and check them out, donate to them and all the rest. And they help children that want to play games with their friends but can't because they're differently abled. And that is an amazing group. And they have loads of resources. There you go, Special Effect. They have loads of resources for people to look up, to see, and they have videos that they put out that you can learn from as a game developer what they look at doing to help accessibility for people. So I'd highly recommend checking this group out. And there you go. There's a Microsoft adaptive controller in the picture.
There's also another thing I want to bring up is that text size matters a lot. If people can see but just not well, you need to make sure that there is a text that is sufficiently big on the screen and is dyslexia friendly. There are fonts that will just be a nightmare for certain types of people to read through. Make sure that you pick a proper font that is easy to read, that you give it enough space on the screen, and that you make sure that on whatever platforms you're shipping, it's going to be big enough. Because if you're shipping with tiny font and then you put it on a Switch, which has like a tiny display when it's undocked, you are not going to have people who are able to read your game unless they're going like this, and you already failed. There are a ton of videos about this. There's been one from Microsoft discussing the minimum recommended resolution for text. God of War added text size option because players complained about that early on. Spider-Man came out with amazing options just from the start, and it got really well received because of that. Make sure that you start with subtitles on, by the way. That's something that a lot of players will get really angry about and not even know is an option, which is something that can really help their experience. Because if they can't understand what is going on at the start, they're going to be lost really quick and they're going to say, oh, this game sucks and don't understand anything, and they're going to leave. Try to give them as much information that is going to keep them comfortable as possible. But to get back to the point, as you pick your font, you should try and pick one that like test with other people how this goes. Don't just go with your own intuition here. Also, Masahiro Sakurai on Creating Games is on YouTube recently, and I really wanted to bring that up because his videos are amazing. They're a gold mine for any game developer out here. He even did one on text size recently. So check him out.
Oh, can you give me the link to that one too, so we can drop it in chat?
Absolutely.
I'd double that for VR as well. People that put text in VR that's really small, like people aren't reading that. Maybe you've got a really good resolution on your headset, but you might have the best resolution and other people just don't, and they will not be able to read that. Also, when you're reading the text you put on screen, if you wrote it, you probably aren't reading it fully. You're using memory rather than actually reading it. So get someone else to read it and see if they can actually read it well. And if they're sitting there for ages, eye straining on your text, you've done it wrong. Slap yourself in the face. Go and do it properly.
Also, use shape changes a lot if you're trying to get something to be noticeable. Text that just fades into the screen is not going to go into people's vision focus unless it's like right in the dead center of what they're already looking at. You need to make sure that if you're adding new information, that information is actually easily spottable. And there is something that a lot of games fail, which is a blur test, where you squint your eyes so you can't see quite right what is going on. And a lot of shapes will get lost in the mix, and new notifications will also get lost in many of these games. And people don't pay enough attention to that because people say, pay attention to the gameplay, but UI is part of the game. Just make sure that everything that you need to know in order to play is visually accessible, and for people who are visually impaired to the degree that they can see it, there are other cues alongside with it. In Genshin, when you finish a quest in Genshin Impact, they will play a sound, do a giant flash on your screen that says quest complete with a color bar that's just straight up like 10% of your screen, and they're also going to switch the note on the side of your screen, and they're going to give it an animation and a flash of its own as well. It's just like, hey, you finished the quest, you can move on.
So I pulled up that YouTube channel, and we just dropped in the link for the channel and the special effect group into chat for anybody who wants to check it out. You want to tell everybody again briefly what this channel was about, Uriah?
Yeah, sure. So Masahiro Sakurai is an amazing creator. If you played Super Smash Bros., he's the one you keep seeing talking about all the characters and how much work goes into developing them. And here he makes dedicated videos on how game developers approach many different concepts in games. And it is fantastic. Everything he says, I've experienced myself to some degree, and I appreciate his work a whole lot. There is just so much good in here. I can't even like a recent video he did, like let your characters shine effects. He has a thing about back faces that have a different texture from the front faces, so that if you look at an effect, it always is visibly coherent, that you can see your character where it is, which is important because that's your hurt box for the character, and you never want to lose that in a game with combat where it's primarily you don't want to get hit. It's just a lot of really good practices. It's just great.
Oh, it's linked down there so everybody can check it out. Andrew, you also had linked an asset that had popped up here. You want to tell everybody what this one was?
You know, I haven't used it, but I had seen this before, and so I realized it was probably on the asset store. It looks like a filter that helps you make your game work with for certain types of color blindness. As far as I can tell, it changes the colors of your game in order to work.
Oh,
That's my take on it.
I'm pretty sure it's the opposite, where you can use that to see, as if you are colorblind, what is about to go wrong. So this isn't fixing it, it's letting you see what is actually the problem.
Okay. Well, that's
Oh,
just
it's showing
just
it to you
normal.
as if you're colorblind, so you can see if there are issues with it and you can notice them.
Yeah.
Ideally. Okay.
It's not to say that you can't make a filter that will convert colors from a space that people can't easily see to a space that they can easily see, but it would be way better if you just offered the experience correctly from the get-go for everybody. And if you can't do that, then add some options.
Absolutely.
All right, let's pop up a couple more questions here. Somebody asked what happened to my playroom. I assume that they're talking about the lack of RGB lights. Now, I feel bad that I'm not sure if I tell Google to change those lights, if it'll work yet. They'll be coming back eventually. I have like a table full of RGB lights out on the other side of the door there. It's a little overwhelming. Now I got to figure out where to put them all. But other than that, they'll be back. And then a question about designers. Or this would be an interesting one, since none of us are really designers, but I think we all know the answer to it. And the question was, do designers use Unity, and what do they do/use in it? So talking about game designers that aren't necessarily programmers. I wish Salim was here. I messaged him earlier, but anybody want to answer this? Do game designers use Unity or Unreal or whatever game engine they're working in?
First off, yes. Second
Yes.
off, it isn't necessarily game designer. It could be any type of designer, because there is a giant scene for architectural visualization in both game engines.
Sure.
If you're just trying to make a room to display to somebody, here is the room that you could buy all the furniture for. There are a ton of sets for that, where you can just like use an XR application and just look at how a room would be and move some furniture around and say, yeah, I'm good with buying that. It's a huge scene right now. Also, trying to understand what you actually want to buy. For example, if you just look at an empty space in your room and you can fit in a chair or whatever. So designers could use that a lot to get people's preferences if they try to help get that. For game designers, obviously, today you usually get involved in the game engine that you're working on, because trying to put a middleman between the game designer and the actual game isn't as efficient as just letting them do what they need to do on the engine. So throwing a game designer inside and giving them some easy tools within the engine is way more efficient. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they definitely use it.
Yeah, pretty much every day. Most game designers will be in the engine that they're using daily, maybe in some external tools too. But they'll mainly be in the engine, adding in content or modifying content and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if you think of something like a level designer, your programmer's not going to be doing your level design in a big studio. The designer's going to be in there moving crates around, working out the bends and how everything's going to stream in. Because when you're doing streaming, for instance, you need your dog legs, you need your choke points, you need all that sort of stuff. The designers are going to go in and work all that out for you. Sound designers are going to be in there putting in their groups, putting in their zones, doing their mixes and all the rest. So yeah, they're all in Unity using the many functionalities that Unity has for that.
And they need to as well, because there are things that you just can't see without getting a really quick feedback loop on what you're doing. You can, if you make a change and you have to wait a week to see that change, you're not going to be able to confidently adjust things to be the best that they can. A level designer can just go and see in first person how would a scene look at every angle, every point that they care about. Oh, maybe I can move this corner right here so it creates a better visual line to the thing that we want the player to focus on. Maybe I can put a little treasure here and the player is going to be really happy about that. Maybe the enemies get too crowded up because I made this corridor too little, and they can't know that unless they enter play mode and see all the enemies coming in, or you put some special visualization in there for them. But they need that kind of tool set.
Yeah, so, and going back to like early 2000s when I was working in AAA with Sony, we had a custom game engine that was created by a set of programmers. And then we had Maya for doing all the artistry. So the artist would come in, they'd develop the units or whatever, or the stuff that was going into the worlds, and they would create that stuff, and then they would basically export it, and then it would be picked up by the engine and put through to the engine. But the level designers also needed to be there working on that level. So we had to create proprietary stuff for them to do that. So we created our own level editors, and we also created level editors in Maya. If people don't know Maya, it's a 3D engine that we could basically create 3D objects and all the rest. Back then I was a tools programmer, and I actually had to create a navigation system in Maya so that the level designers could drop down and actually check the navigation in the Maya system. They could play the game in Maya before they went and used it in the actual game. Now, obviously nowadays that is Unity and that is Unreal, and those engines have the tool sets, but back in the day they didn't actually have those. So yeah, designers are in there.
Yeah. On a segue to Maya, I actually have something, a little fun story I want to share. So recently I've had a hobby project that I've really been getting into, and I decided that I want a 3D model for a character there, and I want it to be custom authored. I decided I had enough with like store-bought things. I want something that's actually entirely to the point of what I want. So I ended up approaching a concept artist and a 3D modeler recently, and it's just been an amazing experience and a ride to see how actually commissioning a full model for game production would work. Now it's just a hobby project, but I am paying full price as if it's a game, so it's been pretty interesting. And I wanted to bring that up because there is a lot of work that goes into models that you don't usually think about if you are not deep into the modeling industry, like things people don't even consider, like how blend shapes on the character's face would work, or do you need a base body if you have a soldier and he has a helmet and he never removes that helmet? Do you actually need to model a face? What are the considerations here? What are two-sided models rendering? For example, if you have a thin cape, do you actually need to have two vertices to give it a bit of volume? Or should it just be a single vertex wide so that you can cut down on your vertex cost, but at the cost of having to render it twice to see both sides, or you can see your cape from behind? It's a lot of like nice little interesting things. So here is a model created by the concept artist and the 3D modeler I've been discussing with recently, and they are actually open for commission, so I just wanted to call it out. Now, this is an asset store that's like the Unity asset store, but it's called Booth PM, and it's filled with VR chat models. And I browse that a lot, along with other stores, and they just have amazing high bar quality models here, and some visual effects as well, which I found really interesting, all for VR chat. And they made this model, and I saw that they are open for commissions. If you go to the top, there is the Cyber Critter sheet. I just want people to see that. Yeah, at the top, just click Cyber Critter. Yeah. And then click the Forms GLE link. Yeah. So they have an entire forum explaining and asking you all of these advanced questions on how you want your model, because it's going to be production ready at the end. And they even give you like price estimates, which is really, really, really nice. And a lot of questions I just figured I'm never going to be asked, like, do you have a completed concept art? Because they need to know what you want drawn. Like, you can't tell them draw the most amazing thing ever. Artists are not going to be able to know what you actually want, so you have to provide them references. And do you have good enough references that they can understand everything? You're going to have to iterate with someone. And as I mentioned earlier, base bodies are a concept where you just have a body and you're going to slap equipment on it. But if you want to be able to remove the equipment and actually see something underneath, you need to actually have that part modeled as well. So how does that part look? And if you want to have separate face expressions, there are multiple approaches for that. And there's a concept that I'm not sure for starting 3D artists among you, there is this concept called blend shapes, which is different from the concept of animated rigs, where instead of having a set of bones that everything is skinned onto, and when you move the bone, everything moves along with it, you actually draw shape changes to every single point, every single polygon, to wherever you want, and then you save that as a state on the model, and you can slide between the states, and that's called a blend shape. And games use those a lot because they let the artists do exactly what they intended, and they take a lot of work because you can't move a blend shape into anything else easily. Somebody brought up Vicems. That's not exactly the same because you can achieve them in both ways, but it's way easier to do that with blend shapes. So somebody asks if it's a chatbot. Did you commission just the top half? It's not a chatbot, and you could probably do that, I assume. I just wanted to bring it up because there's a ton of considerations here. Like, if you have different shader styles, do you actually need different maps? For example, if you use URP or HDRP, they actually require different minimum amount of textures with specific color channels for different maps. For example, roughness, specularity, whatever have you. So knowing your 3D space environment when you're asking for a model is really, really important. I'm just really happy I found this. It's made me think of a lot of things. And hey, if anybody wants a model, you can just go talk to them.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I like that they've got their pricing there and the big list of questions of all the things that you might possibly want to ask for, along with the prices too. So it tells you roughly how much it's going to cost. So seem pretty cool. I'd be curious to see how it comes out and what you end up doing with it too. You're gonna have this thing fully animated and rigged and all done up, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to get it fully rigged, and they have their own test animation, and I can provide one if I want to test something very specific for my own character. But I'm probably going to just trust them on the rigging here while I'm working on other things because I'm trying to make a project. Yay! But something you brought up earlier, which I really want to bring up, people don't usually estimate how much they're going to have to pay for a model, and prices do vary between artists, but there's a lot of work that goes into a high quality 3D model. If you looked at League of Legends, when they make champion reworks, they actually have a whole pipeline of people who have to go through in every step of the model creation just to make sure that it's exactly right. For example, you have the concept designer that say we need a troll in the game and he needs to come from a cold place, and then he's going to be a troll king, and then there's a concept artist who has to draw a bazillion versions of that ice troll king and figure out how he should look. Does he have a club? Does the club is it made of bones? Is it made of ice? Is it made of something that is entirely unique to the world, like some fantasy metal? I don't know. And then you have to bring that into making reference poses so that the 3D modeler can make the base high poly 3D mesh, and then you can cut it down to a low poly mesh, remaking the model, and then you can rig that. And then are the rigs good enough for the animator to do everything that he needs to do? Do you need to add new bones? If you take all of that and you get through all of this, do you need to add any special effects on top? There is a profession for every single step of the process. And say you have $2,000 and you involved 8 people, they're not going to make a living out of that, and it's a lot of work hours as well. So a few game dev shows back, Jason Starr gave an example that you have $10,000 and you want a game with 4 playable characters and all these levels and whatever. But realistically, if every model is going to cost you $2,000 now, you ran out of budget just on the 4 characters, and you don't have a single enemy or single level to play in. So it's something that you really need to consider as you make your games. And this is why I always recommend to people who are just starting out to use as low poly models as possible, or even just not use 3D models at all and go for sprites. Sprites are way easier to fit together, but they are way cheaper to make. You make a single sprite and this is a done unit. You don't have to rig it. You don't have to do anything to it.
For the League of Legends models, do they actually use high detailed, high quality, like high definition models? I never actually looked into it. I mean, I played a ridiculous amount of League, but you're a little dot on the screen basically, or maybe you're a big dot if you're playing Annie with her bear. But other than that, like, are they relatively high poly, or do you know anything about those? I'm really curious now.
So I think I recall that they had an actual dev log about this, and I think they did have high poly models, though they would probably be specifically for animations or promotional material,
Right.
rather than being entirely for being put into the game. But even like that, you can have levels of detail. There are games that will downgrade certain models and keep other ones high quality because they are the set pieces that make you feel like you're really playing something fancy and you want to pay attention to the rest of the other stuff. Many games will do that a lot for models that are close to the camera because you need to see more detail there. But it's not always just like that. It's even if it's on the center of the screen but still far away, you want to be able to notice the small details to appreciate them.
I popped up this comment because it made me think of Andrew. You're talking about concept art, and Mark had said that they use Midjourney to do game concept art, $10 for 200 art images. And Andrew introduced me to Midjourney, and I love it too for coming up with concepts, ideas. I put it in a couple thumbnails and used them for character icons and stuff. It's really neat for somebody who has no artistic skill to be able to kind of roughly come up with something without knowing how to explain it either. So I thought it was a really cool one. It's definitely worth checking out. And it's free to do. Like, you get like 20 of them for free or something, right, Andrew?
Yeah, you can't use them commercially unless you pay for their subscription per their license. But yes, you can try it out for free. It's can be very addictive. I've been, I do it in my spare time, or when like between meetings, I'll quickly like try some things out, and then when I find something I like, I go crazy with it. And I just released this one on the App Store last night. So for those who don't want to deal with making them yourself, there are packs on the App Store that have pre-made AI art in specific genres. So I suggest everyone give it a try. It's not going to replace a real concept artist. There's no way, because the quality is just not going to be the same, and you're not going to, you can kind of get what you're looking for, and with enough practice, you can get better at saying, I kind of want this, and actually getting sort of what you're looking for. But it's a little bit of a make a whole bunch and maybe one of them speaks to you, but it wasn't what you were actually thinking. It just looks cool, so you'll go with it, type of scenario. But for prototyping, I mean, no doubt, if you're doing icons in a game or something, prototyping, they're great. If you're just doing concept art and you're just looking for something that you want your modeler to make, and just keep, re-rolling the dice until something speaks to you and you say, hey, that's a cool character. I want that character in my game. Then say, hey, make this. Because I do think that the work you get out of it is good enough for a modeler to go off of. For sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's better than anything I could get normally, too. Because, I mean, the alternative is try to find somebody who's a concept artist that can make me something that maybe I'll like for a lot of money. So I feel like this is a great option for people who wouldn't normally be looking at a concept artist. I think for people who already have concept artists and that's already part of their pipeline, like totally useless, or probably relatively useless. But for anybody who's like, never going to go hire a concept artist because it's just not part of the budget or the plan, it's a great way to do it. And it's really cool for the icons. Yeah, these ones just look awesome, man. You've gotten really good at this.
Yeah.
The AI helps. But yes, the other big thing is, when I get stuff made with artists, oftentimes I will go onto Pinterest and do the same thing that I'm doing with AI art, but with Pinterest. And I will look for, say, human knight with gold armor, blah, 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 and look for stuff that speaks to me. And then I'll send it to the modeler and say, hey, I really like the shield here. I really like the armor here. I really like the face here, so on. But sometimes the modeler, if you're not careful and you don't remind them, gets a little bit too specific, and they end up copying to a greater degree than probably you'd want the concept art you provide for them. And the concept art is, since it's from Pinterest, is often from other games. and that could be problematic in the end. So, at least with AI art, it's a pretty good idea that it's not exactly pulled from another game. It might be similar in some ways, but it's not going to be the same.
So there's something to be said here, because artist consent is something pretty important, and a lot of these models that are trained without artist consent. Maybe they agree to like terms of service, but they don't actually actively consent to, hey, I want my art used by AI learning. And sometimes the AI does get overtrained and will copy just like a real artist, but it tries not to. The algorithms are made specifically to synthesize whatever that they are given in their training. That said, the models keep getting better and better, and I do agree with you that they are addicting, even if you train them by yourself, which takes quite a bit of time and scripts to set up. But if you just train a model and you just try it out, it could be hours worth of fun experience, especially if you're a creative person and you just want to like see your creations come alive. You can just ask for it for any dream character you have, and it's going to take like as many attempts as it takes, but it's going to give you something that you may be happy with in the end. And even if you're not happy with everything in a single picture, you can just make pictures out of like slices. Maybe you want to take the shoe design it came up with in one image. Maybe you want the shield design of another image. You can just slap them together and tell a human person, hey, I like these designs. And even when you do that, what you're actively saying is not, hey, copy these, because that would be plagiarism and wrong and bad. What you're saying is, I like these because they appeal to me for these reasons. And good artists will usually pay attention to what you like about the designs, what is common across multiple references. And they're going to use that to make the model that you want in the end. So that's something to pay attention to. And you want to use words as well. Like an image is 1,000 words is a statement that carries very, very true, because trying to say, here is an intricate shield with ornamental bits that go like sideways in squigglies and whatever have you, that's not going to be easy to say. But if you just show them an image, it's going to convey way more information. But you still need to use words, because if you're not careful, they could look at the details you didn't even care about and decide they are super important. And you don't want these details. You actually care about something else. Using words lets you tell them specifically, these are the details I want you to look at and make for me, which is important.
Yep.
Of course, I was muted, but I like to mark them up on the image with words and notes and pointing to the specific things to make it really clear what parts I like and what I don't like. Or I'm passing stuff off to artists.
Yeah.
All right, let me kill this window for 1 second, and we got a couple more questions on that, so we can jump into. First one: how do you like the gaming chair? This is that DX Racer Air chair. I thought you were going to do a review of it, but I missed it. I actually haven't done the review of it. I just moved everything into the office, so I'll probably be doing that soon. I actually really like it. Like overall, it's relatively comfortable chair. I like the mesh instead of the leather. It feels nice. And it's relatively comfortable, and I just like the color scheme. It fits well with the rest of the office. But overall, I would say I'm a fan. And then here's a question for Andrew: what's the best bang for a buck VR headset?
I mean, probably the Meta Quest 2, I would think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Dave knows for sure, but I would say it's probably right. The Quest 2, if bang for the buck, not the Pro, because it's way more. It's like 5 times the price, but
it's also not made for just VR use. It's made for mixed reality business use, technically.
Yeah.
So this was $400 at Costco, and it came with a case. It save $100 basically if you go to Costco. But so it's not cheap, but and then the games on it are fairly expensive. VR games seem to be expensive and small. So there's that, but and there's not that many of them relative to other app stores as well. But for VR, it's pretty cool so far.
Are there any other options, Dave, that you would recommend instead of a Quest 2?
So think of a VR headset as a tool to play stuff on, as if you were buying a PC or anything like that. You buy it for its use case. Yeah, exactly. So if you were going to go and buy an Xbox or a PlayStation, that's a console, it's a closed unit. That's what the Quest is. It's a closed unit. You can buy that. You're in their ecosystem. You use the games there. You can sideload and all the rest onto it, but that's their ecosystem. So think of that as your Xbox. If you are the PC person, then there are headsets. If you have an amazing PC and you don't mind having a wired headset, the wired headsets will give you better fidelity. You'll be able to play better looking games. You have to have a good PC for this, but then you've got your Valve Index, you've got HTC Vive, not so much anymore. But then there are loads of an ecosystem that are wired headsets or headsets that stream straight from the computer that you could go to. They tend to be a bit more expensive. But if you're looking for a gaming headset, something you could just game like with a console, you plug it in, you get going, you don't have to tweak anything, you just start. The Quest 2 is the best headset on the market for that sort of stuff. Somebody mentioned the Pico 4. It's fine. They don't have the app ecosystem that the Quest does at the moment, but that's because Meta went and bought all the game companies working in VR and have now been told you're not allowed to do that anymore because you're basically closing off the market. So the Competition Commission is all over them for that. But yeah, so I mean, I have a lot of different headsets for a lot of different uses. And the Quest Pro that got announced, if you're looking at enterprise, you're looking at developing for that, you're looking at pass-through and a really good AR VR headset, the Quest Pro is for you. You're just going to have to fork out a lot more money for it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit more expensive. I still need to get one. Like I said, I tried to order one and ran into some problems. So I've got to get that figured out. Get one soon so I can try it out. There's a lot of stuff I want to do with it. I got a lot of ideas. All right, let's jump over to one of the questions that was submitted in the Q&A. I picked up the Ultimate Game Dev course. Are there any live interactive courses you or Thomas have? So for everybody who doesn't know, I think there's like an hour left on the sale of the bundle. It's all of my courses and Thomas's and a bunch of other stuff bundled in down in the description. Click the link. The live ones, I've got a live one coming up. It'll be, I think, probably beginning early next month. We'll be going through live Q&A sessions and a bunch of live updates. I think early December is probably, maybe late November, might be a little bit earlier. So yes, I don't know for sure on Thomas's where he's at with those. He just did one recently. I'm not sure where the next one will be. For the live ones, though, generally what we'll do is to have the courses, the new content will come out, and then we'll have weekly or bi-weekly Q&A calls where we'll hop in live, go through all of the content and the topics, and then whatever other questions come up. Usually it ends up being a couple questions about course related stuff and then big discussions on other stuff. So that's all that is. I just wanted to make sure that I answered it for the person who signed up and registered so they know. And also anybody else wants to register, like I said, I think there's probably like 5 left. I think there were 8 seats left when we started, and I think 3 are gone. So there's probably a couple left, but it ends in an hour anyway. So not a lot of time, but figured I'd pop that one up. Let's see. Then there was one more question that I had start over here that I wanted to ask Dave. Well, that's probably Dave and Yorai, really. And can you speak to the role of a technical artist, please? And when you're doing this, can you also talk about how much money technical artists make compared to a regular artist or a just standard person working in the game company? Yeah. Because in my experience, they tend to be right up there at the top level, getting paid near what the C-level execs are getting paid. Not always exactly, but getting close.
They get paid as much as
I should say the directors,
artist.
the people up at the top that aren't the C-level execs, everybody below them, I guess.
Lead artists and artist managers. I mean, technical artists, I mean, we talk a lot about tools programmers here because Jason used to be one, I used to be one, both in AAA. And a lot of times when you're there, you have a lot of technical artists working with you in a team to build tools for the rest of the group. They'll also dictate a lot of, like Uri mentioned blend shapes earlier, you'll have a technical artist that will dictate a lot of what blend shapes can go in or what they need. And they'll work out the requirements for the art going into the game engine, and they'll work with the game engine developer to build out those requirements further. You also have technical designers as well that do a similar thing with the programming team to work out the technical aspects for the design team to move forwards. And we're talking about big AAAs here. So I'll give you an instance. I used to work with a guy called Steve, who I'm not going to say what his last name is or anything, in case I embarrass him. But he was a technical artist on 8 Days for Sony, and his job as an artist was, one, he would sit in all the programming meetings to do with art-related issues to give the artist perspective and be able to turn around and say, actually, with light mapping, we want to do this. With probes, we want to have this and all the rest. This is the requirement we need to hit to. And these are the technical aspects from the artist's perspective that we want to use to get to that point. He would also sit in any meetings where I'd be buying in software. For instance, we had Houdini, Maya. I'm trying to think of all the other amazing amount of sculpting softwares and all the rest of it for the characters. They would sit in those meetings and say, yes, we want to buy this, this, and this. And they'd put in the procurement orders with myself managing the tools team to go forwards. So they were partly in the budget. But their day-to-day is sitting there saying, I want to improve the life of the artists that are working on this game. How do I do that? Can I build tools around that? Is this tool I'm going to build beyond my capabilities? Then I will pass it up the line to a tools programmer. So for instance, when we were doing 8 Days, we had Maya, which has an API in the background, which is programmed in C++, but it also has a scripting engine called Mel. And Mel, the Maya scripting language, enabled the technical artists to produce tools themselves, but on a scripting basis. So it wasn't very efficient, but it would get the job done. And they would create lots of tools, UIs that would sit over tools and cross tools to enable them to have better workflows. But then if they came across something that they wanted to create that was beyond the capability or they needed improvements or anything like that, the tools programmer, being a fully fledged programmer working in C++, would develop that tool to be able to come out. Now, the line has been blurred slightly when we talk about Unity being C#. It's an easier scripting language for a lot of people to get hold of and get using to. So a lot more technical artists and technical designers do a lot more coding in their job over what used to be. But that's kind of where a technical artist spans. Now, some of this changes a little bit as you move towards film and what they look at doing. But yeah, in the games group, that's the day-to-day on the technical artists and technical designers.
Yeah, excellent points all around here. In the terms of Unity, and slightly more practical and examples of what actually is going to be your day-to-day working on it, the difference between regular artist and a tech artist is that they are responsible for getting the game shipped with the desired visual outcome, because artists create the source assets that you're going to use. But if you have trashy post-processing, if your shaders suck and take way too much time to show what you need to show and they show it wrong, the work the normal artists did is not going to get its full glory, and your game isn't going to get the appeal that it needs to get in order to succeed. And tech artists need to know whatever software they're working with to make sure that what the artists want gets to show its full glory without breaking the requirements of the product itself. Because if you have an artist and you say, I want your best cheese sculpture, but you didn't consider that you are working in heavy sun and they're going to bring you the perfect cheese sculpture and you're just going to put it in the sun, it's going to melt and nothing is going to show nicely and you don't have anything working. Tech artists need to know the engine really well, need to know what requirements you have to meet. Like, it's the sun, you can't make something that's going to melt. That's going to be one of their jobs. It comes down to a lot of really small details. For example, blend shapes trade memory in order to have a lot of usable small features on the character, compared to rigs, which would have like skinning on the bone, on the polygons of the model fit to a bone, but now you're paying the cost of moving the bone every time that you're making a change. There's a lot of small nuances to that. For example, how many polygons can you push to the screen? Are you on a weak console? Maybe you can't push as many. Can you use a transparent shader or an opaque shader? Can you use some multiple pass system to make things cheaper to render and still look as good? Maybe you can cut down some instruction costs on some shaders. The line does get blurred because a lot of these scripts would be on actually the C# side, telling things to come down to a more reasonable level of performance. But there is also HLSL, which a lot of programmers fear for some unknown reason, which is the high-level shader language. Which is used to actually draw things on the screen. And knowing to write proper shaders for that is really important. And it's not just writing the shaders themselves, you also have like the actual render stack. For example, in URP, they gave you the ability to insert render steps between whatever steps Unity does that you want. So you can make like a render target that draws the scene entirely differently, only for a specific portion, and then you can take that portion and put it on the screen, and the order matters, and how you actually interact with all the available content from Unity matters as well. Also, on that note, tech artists are like a really rare job because you have to have a lot of knowledge about everything. You need to know how good models are constructed, all the terms involved in that, and then you need to know the game engine and how they interact. It's an insane amount of knowledge necessary just to do the job properly. And even then, there are some arbitrary decisions that nobody is going to be able to tell you, and you need to intuit because they don't know these aspects well, and they're just going to come up with an answer of not understanding, and you need to be able to mediate when they do. For example, how many polygons do you think we can push to the screen? I don't know. It's the Switch. 100,000. Okay, but 100,000, what does that mean? You need to understand those things. So it's a really rare job, and they get paid a lot because there aren't many of them, and they can demand as much, and they did do the work necessary to become that. So yeah, tech artists are like some of the unicorns of the industry, along there with the networking engineers, physics engineers, and tools developers that actually matter, and good marketing people.
Yeah, tech artists are hard to find. And network engineers that know what they're doing. Very, very hard to find too. Very good point. So since we're halfway through the show, I just wanted to get the giveaway up and running. Anybody who hasn't entered yet, you got about, I'll give like 2 minutes to enter. Just choose a race and class. You can see them kind of listed along the side there, or see what other people have chosen, and then we'll kick off the battler, and then the winner will get. I think I have a rider key left. I think I have one rider key, so I'll send that, and if not, then I'll send something else awesome. But I think I got a rider license left in my stack of them to give out. So
yep. I came up with something that like I just remembered it. So there was this one game where a friend approached me. He was working on a project, and he was like, hey, our game is running out of memory, and we don't know why. We're not doing anything special in our scripts, and we don't understand. And he showed me the project, and I just popped out laughing at him. Not in any mean way. It's just, it wasn't his fault, but one of the models they imported into the project and they used for like a statue that's like sitting at the corner of a room had over 200 blend shapes for the entire statue, and it was a rather high poly statue, and every single one of these is another set of mesh contents. So that model alone was like 1 gigabyte of memory.
Yeah, I've seen some like that where we had one in Vanguard that would kill the entire performance of a city. You would walk into like one of the main cities, and performance would fall apart if you looked in certain directions. After a bunch of profiling, it finally came down to some plates. There are plates that were placed in rooms, like up on shelves in bookcases, just dozens of them that all had like these giant text. They all had giant textures and like super highly detailed meshes that were killing the GPUs. I mean, this was 10, 15 years ago, so that it didn't have to be that big, and they were just destroying the GPUs on some plates. That and I also found some apples with like 4K textures sitting on a table.
Yeah, the 3D models would really like go, it has to look the best it can. I made this perfect apple texture for you that nobody else is going to be able to make. It's perfect. People are going to look at them and they're going to take a screenshot of that apple. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but they're only going to look at it for like 2 seconds, and they have to get really close to the camera if they even care, if they even noticed it was there, and if they didn't get to pick it up before they got to close down on it, because players will like spam the pickup button as they get too close to things.
And they get the
So-
little icon instead.
Yeah.
That's all they have
So
to.
something on the tech art point that is really important here: use MIP maps. MIP maps are important. Do not disable MIP maps. You say that they make things look bad, they make things run fast.
Yeah, and make sure you do the scaling down of the textures. Don't forget a model or a mesh and forget to optimize it, because it's become a big problem. All right, I'm going to kick off this giveaway battle now, and it looks like Jeff was the last one in. I have to have Jeff come down here sometime. And we'll let everybody shuffle up, and then they'll all run into the middle, start fighting to death, and the winner will get a prize.
So I just wanted to point out that as we look at the battlers, have you ever considered converting it to dots yet? Because 1.0 came out, like the alpha, not long ago.
I've considered it, but it would only be for the experiment in playing with dots again in a newer version, because it's never going to be something that needs the performance.
I don't know if you're going to get a lot of battlers here. You could make it run like really fancy and then increase the visual fidelity.
I guess
just-
it's possible, but
Yeah,
it hasn't been something I've thought about much.
Yeah, that's fair. I do want to bring up though, Johnny, Turbo Makes Games, made a whole almost 1.5 hours course on Dots 1.0, a showcase video on how to like get something running, and it's great. And Code Monkey also made one, and it's also great. And 1.0 is really, really interesting. I still haven't dived too deep into it because I'm kind of heartbroken after I had a physics bug with dots 0.51. And I don't want to start redoing everything up to that point only to find that bug again. So I may do a stress test soon, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are you diving into 1.0 then? Because I saw those videos too, and I thought it seemed interesting. I just gotta. It's one of those things where I'd like to dive into it. I just need to find a good reason and a bit of time to actually do it. But first, I need a good reason, like a project where it'll make some sense, I think.
Yeah. So my own personal thoughts are, I absolutely do want to dive into it, but I'm kind of afraid of boilerplate coding. Now, boilerplate isn't that bad these days in code, especially because I use Rider, and Rider has like code quick templates. You can literally script out a short string that you can type and like double tap tab, and it will autofill everything you need to go. So, for example, Dots right now, they lost some of the convenience tools in an attempt to make things better long term. And when you want to make a component, you have to make the iComponent data, and then you have to separately make the offering mono behavior. And then you also need like possibly a converter or an aspect for some queries. A lot of those are really boilerplate in terms of code. So making things like typing icomp and double tapping will just get me the iComponent data, the component offering, mono behavior, and all the rest, with just like having to type the name of it, and it will autofill it in all the places that it needs to go. That's the kind of stuff that I like love having. So I previously set myself like a whole suite of that for 0.51. And now I'm going to have to set one for 1.0. And I don't really care that much about that. But a lot of the changes that they made to the systems, they are way more explicit about what they ask for, which is both good and kind of frustrating, because I found the 0.51 way more intuitive. And I heard that it's crashing for quite a few people, so I'm kind of waiting it out, and then I'm gonna give it a shot.
What about you, Dave? Have you played with dots at all lately?
No.
Yeah. And I know Andrew's not. I was just kind of curious. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. We gotta talk to Johnny about that too. See what's new in 1.0. Because I know it came out and it's been, like I said, on my list of stuff that I'd like to get into. I just gotta find the time.
Yeah,
Real
it's a
quick.
timing thing. I've got so much on, and it's not something that I'm going to use to sell at the moment for cash. So I'm going to steer clear of it for the moment, and then I'll move on to it. Luckily, everybody else will have worked out all the problems by then, and I'll benefit from it.
Yeah, very true. So Archangel asked if we invite Code Monkey someday, and definitely Code Monkey, come on anytime. I think most of the people that I know of on YouTube, I've already probably sent them an invite link. If I haven't, then it probably just got bounced in like a spam thing. So yeah, definitely, and just about anybody else too. Also, before we get on, Yori had a question down below I wanted to tag, but this one was about a video idea for Dave from Jeff. So you can show the, what did he say? How to surface an interface field in the inspector. So there you go, Dave. Now you know exactly what
fun
to do.
topic. Yeah, sure. I'll
Damn you,
knock something
Jeff.
up about that. Just use an object and then restrict the type.
Yeah. I generally just don't. I don't use interfaces in there and don't try to serialize them because I just make an abstract class 90% of the time. So here's the question that Yori had tagged. Serialized references are pretty cool, but last time I checked are runtime only, which makes me not really get the usefulness of them. So a video would be cool.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up because serialized references are incredibly useful, but they are gimped by Unity. So here's how this goes. When you have a script in the inspector, it has serialized fields in it. Serialized fields are serializable classes or structs or data pieces that are put for your ability to edit. And this goes well until it doesn't, because Unity needs to know what it's actually working with. And Unity doesn't automatically have the ability to discern a type. So if you have inheritance, where you say there is an animal, it can be a cat, it can be a dog, it can be a horse, it can be an elephant. Unity, if you tell it, make me an animal field, it won't know which animal you want. And if these classes are not something that can be presented in the inspector because they don't have a way to be put as like their own monobehavior, or they're not a specific concrete type, Unity won't be able to know which one animal is it, and it's just not going to be able to show you anything. So serialized reference lets you use a reference to a class instance of your choice in the inspector with inheritance and everything, and Unity is going to be able to say, oh, this is the type you asked for. But some very few important things here. First off, when you use serialized reference, it's actually an instance living in the memory of the game, just one of it. It's serialized into the actual class by a pointer like anything else. Like you're referencing a mono behavior, except you're referencing an actual raw class instance. It exists only for the place that you put it in, which is important for the reason that if you make changes to it, it's going to apply in multiple places. It's also unique to that one reference. You can't use serialized reference and move it to another script. It's going to be like one horse per cart mono behavior. And another point where Unity is gimping this is that there is no actually easy drop down. Once you made your serialized reference and you're all happy to go and use it, it doesn't actually give you a drop down to, okay, which instance type do you want to actually put here? You actually have to write your own scripts in order to be able to assign things into these fields, which is frustrating to say the least. Because nobody's going to want to start making their own drop downs or their own pop-up menus or whatever have you. And even with David here being completely amazing on tools, there is no video about that. So hint, hint.
All right, I'll make a video about it. Jeez. There's
You're
a
great.
quick,
We love you.
There's a dirty little cheat that you can do with some of these where you don't even have to use serialized reference. So you can use serialized field, you can use the Unity engine .object as the entry that goes into it. Then you can use a property drawer over that with a special attribute that basically says restrict to these particular types. And then you could just basically check in that property drawer that those types are coming in. And if they're not, get rid of them. That's one way to do it. It's a dirty, hacky cheat, but that means you can use interfaces on it. But there you go. If anybody followed that, I'll put it in the quick tips video at some point and check it out.
I'm clapping internally because this is a Master Tool developers right here. Simple and intuitive, in my opinion.
Nobody uses property drawers enough, and I've been trying to get in my recent videos. I've been doing loads of stuff on property drawers because they're awesome. Like the ability to write a struct and then draw it the way you want to and restrict things. And those are people that go, oh, well, if I tick this box, this option, this flag, then all these variables underneath it shouldn't even be shown. How do I do it? Property drawers. But you can tick a box and suddenly the property drawer goes, okay, I won't draw all the rest of this stuff because it relates to the fact that if that box is ticked, none of them are relevant. It's not the best way to do it data-wise, by the way, to create your classes that have big sections that just get chopped because you've got one flag that's set above. But I'm not you. You might need a way of doing that. But you can use a property drawer to basically nullify out loads of variables from a flag. That's just one option. But yeah, they're awesome. Go check them out. I've got a video on property drawers. I'll find it so Jason can have it. But yeah.
Nice. Oh, we've got the last looks like 4 battlers left on the giveaway. I'm gonna see who wins this. We got this is Jeff, Artem, and I don't know. Is it going to be the developer or Darren? I'm going to say Darren's going to win this. I'm wrong. I don't know. They'll let this battle's about to finish, and then once it's done, there are a couple things that you guys have dropped that I want to share on screen. But there was a question I guess we can talk about while we wait for this Bard and Necromancer to keep healing themselves over and over, which was we're launching our game during Steam Fest next February and EA a week after, or early access a week after. What's your top advice for a successful launch? I wish Thomas was on for this one because this one I don't have a lot of good advice on. Do you guys have any just general advice on game launches, like what to do to make it successful?
Yeah, whenever you come onto a show like this and write a question where you're saying we're launching our game on Steam next month, you should be writing, we're launching our game called so-and-so during Steam Fest next week, so that people mention your game in the question that you're asking. So talk about it everywhere. Yeah. So put it in the chat.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Put it in there. Share it.
Yeah. Be confident about your release. I'm wishing you a lot of good luck. In regards to what you should actually do with this information of the Steam Fest and early access, listen to feedback and address it quickly, because people are going to try the game out really early on into the Steam Fest. And if some of them have a bad time, they're not going to recommend it to others. Alternatively, if they have a good time, they're going to tell it to everybody. And your game is going to get a lot of visibility out of that. And you should try to maximize that, because that's going to give you more opportunities for success. So trying to have a good way to gather feedback and have a good way to address that feedback quickly. You can update games on Steamfest, as far as I'm aware, and you can update demos if you have them consistently, and you can update your early access, and most games don't update their early access enough. So I really, really hope that you get to address things. On that note, Terraria's Labor of Love update has been out for like a month now, and we've been making hotfix after hotfix after hotfix for it, because we don't have a lot of problems with this update, but this update had so few problems that we're going back on the backlog back to 2012 just to fix all the issues that remained in Terraria for years. And we have like the most nitpicky bugs ever. For example, if you have a flower near the door and you open the door in the direction that's not the flowers, it may get cut and it may only be 2 pixels off. This is the kind of stuff we're fixing in Terraria these days. But yeah, so addressing feedback is important. Happy players are not going to have important problems, and if they can nitpick about this kind of little stuff, that's a great sign. But you should still fix them. Treat every piece of unhappy situation seriously, and if you do get happy feedback, try to emphasize it. Try to make more of the stuff people are happy with, not in a way that's going to be making them annoyed and think there's oversaturation of this stuff, but enhancing the rough edges of whatever is already fun and letting it shine. Also, in regards to hacking editor scripts, there's actually an amazing article by Unity on Unity's blog that you're showing right now, which is the Advanced Editor Scripting Hacks to Save You Time. It's a 2-part piece. It's fantastic. There's a lot of stuff here about how to automate your asset importing, getting it perfect without any chance for mistake, immediately draggable into the game. If you have a content pipeline and you're going to make a lot of content for your game, you need this kind of stuff to save you time.
I'm gonna pull this one. So I shared this in the chat for everyone. Oops, and I just lost my tabs. I had shared it in the chat and popped it up on screen so everybody could see it. What kind of stuff is in this? My tab just disappeared. Sorry.
There's a lot of features. There's a lot of features in Unity's editor that a lot of people just straight up don't use, and if you use them properly, you can get a lot of mileage out of them. This video goes over some really easy wins that you can have. So, for example, if you have a certain naming convention for your models, as a lot of teams try to have, just for the sake of their own convenience, you can actually extract that into labels on your assets. Assets can have labels in the Unity project viewer, and you can actually filter by the labels. But more importantly, your scripts can also filter by the labels. So if you put a label that says, for example, character model, and your game has teams, the game can you can write a script that says, if this is a model and that model has the label character, then swap all the shaders that are imported for that character into team-specific shaders and make 2 prefabs for the blue team and the red team if you want, for example. Or, even if you're going to have just one and you're going to assign it by script, you can just assign that one. If you want to make specific texture import settings, you can do that. If you want to have specific channel packing for textures, making your own data types, you can do that. You can make your own cookie donut or type, for example, and you can have whatever fields you want in it, and it's going to offer whatever you want out of it. This is important to pay attention to because you can save so much time with this. There are so many things that people are going to make hackathon solutions for that they don't have to. You can, for example, make a text file and have the text file be prompted into some dialogue engine of your choice. And even say, if you put a certain string in the text file, it's going to figure that out, make an array of sound instances that you want, and bind them to that text tag that you added, that whenever you play that text and the tag is there, it's going to know to go and take the sound and play it. You can make so many things to save you a lot of time with this. It's going to be intuitive to owl for if you do it well.
Yeah, have you looked through this doc yet, Dave? This blog post?
Yeah. I knew a fair amount of it, but yeah, there are some gems. There's one thing that popped up recently that I was talking to somebody about, and it's another thing for coders out there outside of just the tool side of things. But if you're using the create C# class still in your options with the right click on the project menu, and you go in there and write the namespace above that class every time, because you should be using namespaces. If you're not using namespaces, again, slap yourself in the face, start using namespaces. But if you have a default namespace for your classes, Unity actually has a field in the settings, in the editor settings under project settings, that enables you to just put in a namespace. And then every time you use that create C# class, it will fill that namespace in. It's a little tip that people don't know, that they don't show in any of these things. There's another one that I don't know why Unity defaulted to this, but whenever you copy paste an object or you duplicate an object, it does the little brackets around the number, and it does that every time. And everybody I know deletes the brackets, and they go through and do this every single time. Unity has another option in those editor settings that enables you to choose whether you want brackets, whether you just want a number afterwards, or whether you want an underscore number. And nobody uses it because nobody knows about it. So that's another one. I haven't done a video on this. I probably should. But there, like you were saying, there's so many options in there. And from the big things you're always talking about to the really small little tiny things I'm mentioning here, that save you an absolute ton of time in producing your work. Presets. I've got a whole video on how to build presets. And you could use presets for when you import a texture in, when you import an animation in. There's a preset that can process that. You could take a preset, you could drag it onto your world. You can have an object in your hierarchy, and you could just press, I want this to be a preset. It's a little button at the very top of the inspector, and that will create a preset of that object. And then whenever you create that, it will just use that preset. So there are plenty of options there that you should be using, because it will make your life quick. I've been meaning to do a live stream at some point where I just say, right, I'm going to just create a Unity project, and I'm going to show you how quickly I get going with a Unity project. We've just showing you all these little tips from the point of the fact I've got a setup tool that just sets everything up for me. And then when I create code, I have a tool that I literally right click and say, I want to create a component. I want to create a property drawer. I want to create an editor from my selection. So I have a component, and I press editor from selection, and it creates an editor for that component and fills all the details in. So I'm not just creating mono behaviors constantly and then copying and pasting, cutting them all out. Obviously, when I do my videos, I cut them all out because people don't have those tools because they're mine. But there are so many things you could do. So yeah, as Jason's pressing right there, that option there, if you are constantly clearing out those little brackets, that thing will save you a ton of time. And if you're using the brackets, stop. It's an incredibly bad naming convention that should have never been there in the first place. Do not use special characters in your naming convention, apart from the underscore. That's the only one. If you're using anything else.
I kind of wish there was an option with just prefab 1 or one with a space. Like,
yeah, I know, because it's prefab dot 1 or prefab underscore 1. Yeah,
but you shouldn't use spaces in your names.
But it's better than brackets or dots, or I mean underscores.
Yeah, I mean I'm entirely with you, and also the parentheses actually have a space before the parentheses, so it's
yeah.
Point.
I'd like it if it was a little more configurable, I guess, but it's still cool. I did not realize that was there.
Also, that was sarcasm. You can use whatever naming convention you want. If your game depends on the names being accurate, you're doing something wrong. Let the names be names and nothing else.
And then, Jason, just above that is that root namespace option. So,
yes, right
there
here.
You go. Root namespace. Fill that in with your namespace.
On another note, if you make assembly definitions, you can actually assign root namespaces there by assembly, which is also amazingly useful.
And then go and watch my video on how to create really easy code and change the templates for Unity, so you can create your own mono behaviors with your own layouts, because it will save you a ton of time as a coder in Unity.
That said, do any of you guys actually create a script by right clicking and hitting new C# script? I mean, beyond the first one that you make for the project, or
so in my case, it's as long as my IDE isn't open, it's how I start my day. If I just come in and I'm changing some settings, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to need a new script here. Is the IDE open? No, I'm just going to make it through Unity's editor and let it fix itself. On that point, if you do have a certain preference on how your script files should look, Unity has a templates file in the editor's folder that you can actually edit the template and include like a bunch of new information. For example, putting copyright text at the top, or adjusting things so you don't have the start and update methods on every new script, because you're never going to use them, and you don't want them empty there because they're still going to consume performance. Just good stuff.
Oh
yeah, so this video here actually shows you how to do that templating thing that Uri was just talking about.
Yeah.
So you can go and change the template. The only annoying thing about it is you add a new Unity editor, You have
Yeah,
to
you
go
have to
change
do it
that
again.
template in that. It's super annoying. Like
Yeah,
that
and you
should just be a
can
global thing.
Yeah, and you can do that separate per project, except you can actually make your own version of this, which I think you have a video on as well, right?
This video actually goes into that, how to
Yeah,
create
okay.
your own templates and build those templates. I mean, this is a very basic version. So when Jason talks about the right click, I do right click, but then I have this thing called code, and then that opens up and it's got all the different options for all the different templates. And they're templates I create for myself. And then I can basically use those in any option. So property drawer, those edited from selection and all the rest. So maybe I'll do an extended video on how to do a really high-end version of that stuff. But the only time I ever use the right click create C# thing is when I'm doing a video, because that's what people have as default.
Yeah, most of the time I assume you just typing out the code down in your editor and then hit move to file. Most of the time when you're creating the classes, though, you're just doing it in your code editor, right?
Yeah, or I'll write it in the same file I'm already in, and I'm just going to move that out.
Yeah, that's my general practice. I'll start writing it at the bottom of the file that I'm in or the top, and then I'll hit Alt-Enter, move to its own file, unless I need to put it into a different folder. Then I might end up right-clicking and creating too.
Yeah, my preference is that I'm going to make a bunch of classes that are tied to each other, and I'm going to make them like as I need them, all in the same file, so I can see things easily, iterate quickly. And then once I'm done and it's kind of working how I want it, then I'm going to extract it all out. And like in Writer, you can do it in like 2 clicks. It's going to make whatever amount of classes you have all have their own file under the proper namespace. It lets you iterate way more quickly.
All right, let's pop up this question from Michael about why does Unity use Dave's favorite naming convention, M_ in their code?
They don't, and they do. Because they're terrible people. If you look at the examples in if Unity has an actual document on naming convention. Don't know if anybody's seen this, but you can find it. I can't. You'd have to search it. But it's the Unity C# naming convention that they show you the best practices for naming convention, and then you go and look at the templates they do, the code examples they have on their API, and it doesn't follow it, which is awesome. I mean, you got to give them some benefit. Some of this code is old school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's probably so multiple teams and people going through making the stuff, right?
Yeah, going way back to the day where we still were using M_ like professionals. Give me the hate. Give me the hate. I live on it. Now, okay, so yeah, M_. I'm not going to go into the history. Look it up. We've regurgitated this so many times on the channel. Look, when I have something that's local to a function or I have it local to the class, I like to be able to read it really quickly, that it's part of the class, part of that function, part of whatever. It's public, it's private. So I have M_. I also use K_ for constants. Hate me even more. But that's just a way of, it's an old C++ coding thing that we used to do, coding naming convention, that a lot of C++ coders, when they moved over to C#, took it with them. Now they got rid of a lot of other stuff that went into it, like saying whether that variable was an int or a string, or we had little, Jason laughs, we had little notes for all of that as well. That disappeared because the IDEs got better. Now, somebody pointed out to me the other day, well, didn't point out to me, I knew about it, but I don't use it, that you can color code whether something is local to the class or local to the function or anything like that. It's not as clear as having something there that just says, that's like, I can read that immediately. It's super readable for me. Now, maybe that's different for you. Maybe you're colorblind and those colors really don't work for you. Then,
or you work with other people colors. And they don't want to install the plugins.
Your
and I've tried that before.
For them,
it's impossible to get everybody to do the color schemes to make it show up.
The funny thing is, even somebody who pointed out there's like this book that people keep regurgitating at me, like about the coding standards and the best naming coding standards. It's this whole template that people worship. Look, funny enough, you go into that book and the page headers are all in Roman numerals. That's not easy to read. Like, I'm not going to pay attention, but look, it is what is best for you and your team. Now, I blend myself into whatever team I go into. So when I work for other companies and help other people, we have a conversation about the naming standard to go forwards and naming conventions to use in that company that everybody is comfortable with. But the point is, we all stick to those. We're super consistent. So we just posted that. And that's what matters. If once you get used to that system and it's consistent, it's readable, doesn't matter. And hate me for what you want.
So nobody's going to hate you, but I have a question now.
They do.
Now that I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if you don't answer this. You said earlier that you use K for constants, and I'm like, wasn't that for key? Because every time you use that in your videos, it's for specific keys on the path to take into your asset editor stuff.
Yeah, you'll probably see it mostly because I use it in things like when you're taking an animator string to hash, and then it's a parameter that's used in string to hash. Is that the one you're talking about? Because I've used that a lot in the videos where I say, okay, we're going to be saying animator dot get ball or set ball on the animator, and then I use a constant that goes into there. Now you can use the string, but it's quicker to use the reference to it. So I basically have above a read only so and so. K underscore so and so, but K used to be for constant. K underscore used to be for the constants, and that's where it comes from.
Today I learned.
And if it's global, it used to be all caps. Global all caps.
Yikes. One more thing I want to bring up about consistency is that it's not just about the naming convention, it's about the general styling of the code. There's going to be a lot of people with different conventions, for example, where to put parentheses. Do you put them in the same line of the condition, or do you put it in the line under it? Or the people who would use an if statement and what happens after the if statement in the same line, and people who would separate the outcome of the if into a separate line. Or tabs versus spaces. Be consistent about everything so that everybody has an easy time, but don't get pedantic about it, because IDEs can fix a lot of that for you. They can even enforce the consistency. Let them do it. They can detect whatever your project is using and tell you, hey, the rest of your project is going to use that. Don't make yourself a different unicorn to everybody else. And if you do bring code from outside, either you agree with your team to keep it as close to the original as possible, or you let the IDE fix it up so everybody else can edit it afterwards. But make it consistent.
There's a really funny clip from Silicon Valley, the TV show, of the guy, and he's just got a new girlfriend, and he's talking about tabs versus spaces. You don't really hear a lot of people arguing about that anymore, but it used to be such a thing. And it used to be a massive argument. Am I using 4 spaces? Am I using 8 spaces? Are we using a tab?
You go to 5 spaces instead.
People with 5 spaces need to be shot. But it's a whole thing. It's a really funny clip. If you don't understand what we're talking about there, it's an older thing that used to happen a lot. But watch that clip from Silicon Valley, and it will probably explain a lot how coders get really angry about it, because they talk about how are they going to raise the kids in a tabs versus spaces world.
Tough one. Two spaces is the worst, though. I don't know if you've. I hate that. It drives me nuts. I can't read it.
I don't feel strongly against 2 spaces, but I did get like a bit of mourning about it, because I forgot the name of the language now. I'm blanking out, but when you make GitHub action scripts, like ones that for continuous integration, you can use, I forgot the name.
2 spaces at the end of a line for a new carriage.
No, at the start of every line to indent things. You had to have like consistent spacing for every indent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it was 2 spaces at the end of a line to build a new line in their text README files or something. I'm trying to remember. It's like a weird markup.
Yeah, it's a really weird markup language. These days, I think they have something better, but I'm really blanking on the name, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. I haven't done that in a while, to be fair.
Python, the best scripting language of all time.
Python is what made me hate tabs versus spaces. It made it irritant. Back in the day, I was like, oh, this doesn't work again. Oh, I accidentally hit space. Shit. And back when the editors were terrible and you couldn't just see it. It like hit the arrow key to see and watch it move over in my amazing notepad. At least the editors I could afford as a kid.
I still use Notepad sometimes, by the way. I modded my Notepad. There's actually a real. You don't even need like all of that power tooling. I just have a notepad that says, "Yeah, you're using C# Go." Like it reads if the file is CS extension, it's just going to give me C# highlighting, and it's so much more convenient. Is actually a really big scene about modding your notepad to be a bit more convenient. And sometimes you do want lightweight script editors just because you're like setting something together quickly. When I don't want it becomes especially helpful when I'm just trying to give examples to people. So I'm going to be writing my example code, and I just want to make sure that everything is right. And like I'm not giving them something that they're going to get stuck on, like my own errors. So here's something that kind of works, but I don't actually need it to compile. Just tell me that it's roughly okay, and I'm sending it over like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually end up using Gists now to send code if I want to send it. Like the GitHub ones, anybody that hasn't used them free, just log in and paste in your code, and it kind of auto detects the stuff. I can see why you do it in Notepad too, but I always just I never don't have writer open, so it's I just start typing in there usually.
Yeah. There is one more thing I wanted to bring up that happened through the past week or so. Last time after the stream ended, Dave and I talked, and there was an interesting topic brought up about the animator state window and it not showing a preview. And I decided that I wanted to explore. So for people who are not in the know, Unity has an animator controller window in its editor, and that is where you offer how your character switches between states of animations. And in order to switch between states of animations, you have to actually have states, and these states use animation clips, which is the actual asset that your character is moving around in. And when you click between the transitions, it's actually going to show you how the animations transition. But if you click on the asset itself, the state itself, it's not going to show you the animation of the animation clip, which is extremely frustrating because sometimes you want to have state machine behaviors, which is Unity's way of letting you script properly for your animation states, which almost nobody uses and everybody should use more. But you can't see the animation clip there, and it's incredibly frustrating because you have to time things sometimes to the state, and not having the preview with the slider is extremely frustrating. So I went a bit into editor scripting and overriding the default editors, and apparently it's a rabbit hole because Unity doesn't expose many of its internal preview features, editors, etc. To you. Now, when you make your own editor window, you can actually override Unity's editors, but you have to know which class you're overriding. And more importantly, you can't access the stuff of the original because you're not using inheritance there. And it's internal, so you can't even like reference it at all. But Unity lets you create editor windows by type, and you can use type.getType with the string, and that lets you make an instance of the thing that you're not supposed to be able to make. And then you can propagate everything you have to that one editor window as if you're like a wrapper to it. And it's extremely fun when it finally works. So I managed to get an animation clip preview, and I even had a button that lets me like show extra information there. I'm still working out how to I actually adjust the timeline. So when I like have a state machine behavior and I have a slider of activate hitboxes from this time to that time, when I slide these, I want to be able to see the animation clip adjust its progress in the preview. So I'm still working on that, but then like I'm really excited that I managed to get it working. So there you go, small tip. You can actually override Unity's default editor windows.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I have to see that. I got to see it in person or in action. Is it all done and working now completely, or?
No, I just said I'm still working on it, but I did get the part that I cared about working.
The core part is all working. Yeah, I have to check that out next time. It'd be pretty cool.
Sure.
Dave, you had just released a video, right? 3 days ago?
I just put a link up. Authoring with overlays. That
Great
was
video.
Yeah, a lot of people really got a lot out of that one. It uses some of the Unity's new UI stuff, and it shows you how to build the toolbars. A lot of people don't realize the little toolbars, like the little move around one, the little moving stuff you see there. You can create your own versions of those, and you can dock those, and you can do all sorts of fantastical stuff with that. So somebody had asked me about it previously, so there you go. I built a video that basically does that, and I've dropped a link in the chat, Jason, there for you. So yeah, go and check that out. That will basically enable you to level up your tooling quite heavily. I've got a lot of people ask me to do more on that, so I'm going to do another video on context around the actual tool when it's got selected, what you've got selected. So that'll be coming out next week, because people are asking about that. And then there's going to be a video on how to create things like joysticks. So at the end, I show a joystick on an overlay in the scene view that you can move around, and that actually moves my full motion simulator, etc. So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
that's really cool. Everybody that's not subscribed probably should go subscribe now and hit the little bell button and go check that out. That's neat. I haven't played with the overlays very much. I played like very little, put up a little one with a button, but haven't really dug in. So I assume there's quite a bit you can do there beyond just like showing some simple controls. Can you do pretty advanced controls in there? I mean, you got to.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got a joystick running on it that actually controls the movement of everything. So you can actually do all your. You could take your Xbox controller, for instance, just break all those controls out and put them on the scene view if you really wanted. I don't know why you would, but you can do. But yeah, you can do really advanced tooling there. And just for the simple tools you do, like for instance, I have a tool around copying and pasting transform hierarchies. So when you're in animation, for instance, you're doing animation. Let's say you want to have a character that's a statue in the corner. Well, you got an animation, you can scrub through and you can get to the point where you're like, oh, that's really cool. I love that way. That's a great pose. I have a tool that I just press on my toolbar that copies all the transforms down from a certain route. And then when I come out the preview of the animation, I just press the other button next to it, which pastes all the transforms all the way down again and poses that character. So for instance, when I'm doing hands, so if I'm doing something that's going to grab something in Unity as a hand grab, then I've got a pose at the end and I've got a pose at the beginning. I could take that whole thing from an animation and then just use the animator to do the blending instead of having to have a full separate in between animation between the two parts. So, and I use the copy and paste there. And again, it's just a toolbar that I can quickly click, job done.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds really cool.
You can also use that for statues as well. If you want to have like a petrified character, you can just slap a different material on it.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So go check it out.
And then Andrew, there's a Black Friday sale coming up, right?
Oh,
2 days? 3 days,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I think I've got some stuff on sale. Just a few. All of my stuff is on sale.
Just a few, all of it.
Yeah, this is actually the first time that all of my monster bundles were invited to the sale. So they're all 50% off. And then on day 3, I think it is, my RPG bundle is 70% off for 24 hours only. And I was looking at it at the preview. You can see the view all button in the top right there. It shows you what day each one's on, and the same day that my bundle is on is also Protofactor's giant bundle. They're on 70% off the same day. So if a person were to buy both, they would save $880 between the two.
Have a ridiculous number of characters.
Yeah, and because Protofactors is really 3 bundles in one. So that, I think a lot of folks may already have those because they've been, around for a while. He's been building them up over many years. But if you don't already have them, it's like 90 characters or something in that bundle. So even if you only like half of them, that's your entire game's monster thing. But then, yeah, and our stuff and his stuff work pretty well together visually. They're pretty good together. So that's always a good benefit. Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of stuff though. Very exciting time.
Well, we'll link that in the chat as well. Go check it out. And it's in 3 days, right?
Yeah, just Monday morning Pacific time.
Yeah, starts in 4 days for the fantasy RPG bundle. But then the rest of the Black Friday sale starts in just on over 2 days. So definitely go check that out. It's linked in the description too. So people can go grab it and see. There's like a million things on there that I wanted to get and play with. I'm going to do a couple videos about it too, I think.
Yeah.
But there's lots of good stuff there. All right. Well, did you guys have any other last second things you want to mention, talk about, or share before we wrap up for the week?
So there is one thing I wanted to bring up, is that Terraria right now has announced a Dead Cells crossover update with Motion Twin, and I'm super excited about that. So I've been like diving through Dead Cells and trying to figure out, oh, how could I remake that effect? Oh, that would be really cool. So I just wanted to give a shout out. Dead Cells is a great game and it's super fun. And even though I die because I tried to go way too fast, there is a lot of cool items there, and it's a joy. If you haven't played it yet, I heavily recommend.
Hey, so that's awesome, man. You guys do a lot of those crossovers. It's really cool.
Yeah, lately we do. Every time we say it's the last update, and then we get some new ideas, and God help us all.
Very cool. Dave, Andrew, any last words?
Make something cool this weekend.
Yeah. Then
go to David's Coffee.
Yeah, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Check out all the links down below. I think there's 9 minutes left on that bundle that's available, and then the asset store sale will be kicking off real soon. And I think we will be back here next week, same time, and see you all then. So I'm gonna find my buttons now and then say goodbye. Again, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and all that share stuff because it helps a lot.